What is up, Bruce Linton? Welcome. Thank you so much for coming out. You're coming in from Ottawa, Canada, fellow Canadian. Am I right?
Indeed, my man. And it's a nice sunny day in Ottawa, Canada, which is not typical for November.
Hell yeah. Global warming is a rabbit hole of the conversation. We'll totally go into that.
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't have enough time for that. But you're born and raised in Ottawa.
Well, it's Southern Ontario, so kind of like pseudo farmer growing up, which is a great way to become somewhat entrepreneurial because by default, I think anybody who lives in an agricultural kind of business, they have to be entrepreneurial because you don't know how it's going to go. And that's just part of life.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things that can be thrown at you, and knowing how to handle those things that are non-linear that you can say. I'm sure you face a lot of different things. You started Canopy Growth Corp. You are the founder. How did you go from working? I read that you went to school, but how did you go from transitioning, building this conglomerate essentially?
Well, it's weird, but I think sometimes it's hard for people to start businesses if they're super close to something. And sometimes it's better to say, like, can I back up from the certainty of an opportunity and see it even bigger? And what I mean by that is clearly there's lots of people who want to have cannabis. And when I started this, there weren't very many people who were legally allowed to grow it. So you have this opportunity to be one of a few providing product to many. And so then you had to say, well, I like that idea, but who's the boss in deciding if we get to go somewhere and get to start something? And in the case of Canada in the early days, and still today, to some extent, Health Canada, the bureaucrat. So the bureaucrat, you don't become a bureaucrat because you want an exciting life. You become a bureaucrat because you like to go home at a certain time of day and you want a certainty of a pension and you just don't want too crazy. So they're pretty risk averse people.
Right. Very
and
safe.
So what we really started off with was, how can we make the bureaucrats the most confident that we're the best choice? And what that was showing that we had methods and systems that would result in them not being embarrassed because product disappeared, not being embarrassed because it was, applied with products it couldn't be, sprays, chemicals, things that were disallowed. And so when I started into it, I was thinking, okay, it's a great business framework, but if you want to get really fast and get really far ahead, you have to kind of, be the preferred licensee of the regulator, because then they're going to work with you because they don't want to be embarrassed.
Did you?
And so that was kind of the logic we used, right? And so we were very much in favor of, if they came to inspect us, can you ask us more questions so we really understand what you're thinking about? Right.
Solve the problems that, they would think of.
Yeah. And so the effect of that was, once there's a saying that if you have a great start to something, you're about half done already. And so because we had a great start in getting licenses and confidence of regulators and momentum, it enabled us often to be the first or the second to have a new license, whether it was for extraction or expansion or, additional locations. We were able to really work well with the regulators, which allowed us to put capital to work. So you could raise money and tell people how you're going to spend it, and you'd actually spend it in that way because you didn't get tripped up by the regulator.
Did you have a mentor at the time to guide you through?
No, it's probably a silly thing to say, but I think you should have a whole bunch of people you ask a bunch of questions about things, and they should be specialists in each of their field. So if you're if you're making your way home and you've during the day encountered a challenge with accounting or law or engineering, you should have a series of people that are almost on speed dial that you can contact and say, these are all the inputs I have. This is what I'm thinking about. What would your perception of that circumstance be? So I had a lot of those people around. But in doing these things, a lot of times, we were chatting just before we started, if you're going to be the leader, right? Not the CEO, but the leader. A lot of the job of the leader is to be able to kind of keep it in your head, think it through, and then follow it through.
The vision.
You think it through and follow it through, and then others can join you. And so, you spend a lot of your time talking to yourself essentially at 3 a.m. going, how are we going to do this? What's this going to turn out like? But that's either enjoyment or insanity. For my case, it was enjoyment. That's a very positive space to be in.
Yeah. it's solitude, and in solitude, breakthroughs happen, and I can totally understand that.
Well, I hate to interrupt you, but you know what I'm trying to find right now? And I've been Googling around on the solitude theme. I'm trying to find someone who wants their car driven to Florida. Because like the idea of the old people fly down and I take 2 days hanging out with myself, driving their car down, sounds just about perfect to think about a bunch of the topics that I'm thinking about, maybe have a chance just to go like all the way through the idea. So I actually am trying to find someone who wants their car driven to Florida, which is ridiculous.
Just
right?
so you could just have that time. I mean, when you explain it, I totally understand. I actually went to music school because my parents put the pressure of like, you work or you're in school or you're kicked out of the house. And I did get kicked out of the house, but I went to school because I wanted to, I got to utilize the time, it was great, but, I got to time to figure out avenues that I could take to be successful in music field, certain ways. And so I can totally resonate with that. And it is very important. On that note, would you say this is a part of a routine? Do you have a routine that you wake up and that you do every morning or every week? I know you have.
I never did. Well, I never did before COVID. Right, my routine in COVID was to just think about what had to be done and whatever that meant, do it. So if you meant jumping on a plane to Germany, or it meant being in the building Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever. And so eating whatever, sleeping whenever, traveling whenever, like I never had a pattern at all. And the effect of that was got a lot done, but I got kind of like fat and out of shape. And I was super tired and I had no idea. So when COVID hit, I actually went, I'm like 35 pounds too fat. What should I do about that? So then I started thinking about a pattern. What do I eat for breakfast? So every day, I now have berries, yogurt, ground up hemp, ground up flax, and chia every day. And I actually try to go to bed at or about the same time every night. And I try to do every second day some exercise. And the effect of that is I don't think I've felt as focused or able to be energetic or just as, physically good in 15 years.
Less sluggish.
Yeah. The only problem that's a bad side, there's always a good side and a bad side to everything. The bad side of getting less fat is you look older because you get a bit more wrinkles.
The skin like sucks to your face.
Yeah. Like when you don't have cheekbones, just round face, your skin's nice and tight.
Jolly.
And so I had somebody today to me go, I didn't really recognize you because you look a lot older. So, well, I'll take that as the bad part of not being as 35 pounds fat. Because like, I'm not a super tall guy. When you're 5'9" and you're tanking around 35 pounds extra weight, it's everywhere, right? You can't say, well, I was just fat in my wrist. No.
You don't smoke cigarettes.
No, I did once. So like, you should do everything once. I smoked 6 in one day, threw up and went, that's note to file. I'm not good at that.
I'm not good at that. Yeah, that'll do it. You don't vape. You never tried to vape.
I've tried it. It's so totally, to be totally transparent, inhalation of anything. So I grew up with a dad who was a smoker. He was a cigarette smoker, and then he transitioned to a pipe smoker, and then he transitioned to a not smoker. But I can tell you, like, we probably spent up until age 12 or 14 bringing home pictures of like black lungs from cigarettes and why you shouldn't smoke, and getting in the car, and everybody gets in the car, and before he could move, then he's got to start the cigarette or the pipe, and you'd sit in the car and you'd be coughing. Like, so smoke and me don't hang out together very much because that was not the best. Like, hey, okay, everybody get in the car. We're going somewhere. Okay, now I got to fire up my cigarette before we can drive out the laneway. Right. And that was back in the day. So, hey, leave your windows up. I don't want it getting cold in here. That kind of shit. So
you're just stuck in this smoke trap.
And so that definitely makes you have an opinion that I'm not like super fond of smoke, which partially was what drove me when I was at Canopy to say that, I think society has so many ways people expect to enjoy things that are intoxicants, pleasure, relaxants. And the biggest and best one is if you're at a concert outdoors, right? Like if you say, well, what's one of the nicest days you have in a summer? sloping grass hill, listening to music played live by a variety of artists you like, and ideally sipping away on a cannabis beverage, not beers. And so like that whole thing to me felt like it would be a great on-ramp for people to like beverages. And then bars are designed like in Canada. You're in Canada. A lot of people you may listen to you aren't. In Canada, trying to find a place to smoke a cigarette or a joint is increasingly close to impossible.
Right. Getting a lot harder.
Yeah.
And you feel self-conscious. Even when I'm walking, I'm like, yeah.
But to have a beverage, there are more and more places opening called bars and outdoor concerts. So I just think that the beverage angle, and the reason I advocated for it, is it's just socially less friction.
Right. The new people, there's different types of people. Like I use a lot more than your average user, and the average.
Call yourself above average. So think of yourself as above average.
Yeah. Yeah, baby. I like that. So the new people who are getting into it, guess what they're going to get into? They're going to get into the drinks and the edibles. And I lived in an environment where smoking was the same thing. It's like wake up to cigarette smoke. It turned me off to cigarettes completely.
But I don't know if you've used some of the heat not burn. So obviously, we had Storts and Bickle variety of lines. But we also, one of the companies I'm involved with is called Amura. And I like it because it's essentially what they do is you pre-fill the stick. The stick fits inside the heating device. And what you have is a filter in your mouth, and it's a heat not burn, and it works great. It's super on point and quick to the temperature that's optimal. You're not burning. You're just heating, and it works fantastic. It's very portable. So I've been helping those guys a bit because I just think there's going to be, there's a bunch of rental environments. You talked about renting rooms. Yes. You probably have a rule, believe it or not. I bet you have a rule that says you can't smoke in the room you rent them.
Of course.
Right. But you could heat not burn.
Yeah. You could vape. That's totally fine because it doesn't stick. The car doesn't, create a tar. Tar.
So like that, those are the sorts of things. A lot of times if you say like, do I want to change the world, or do I want to fit into the world with the change I want? And that's why when you think about beverages, you can fit into the world with the change you want rather than changing all the smoking laws. Like, hey, you got to allow me to have a smoking lounge. You'll never win that argument in Canada for a long, long time.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It's funny. My father and I we invested in Tweed at like $2. Like we got in like super early, man. Like I felt something so good about it. I like to be in tune with the zeitgeist of things. Even finding Redlight Holland at 6 cents is super grateful for that, like super dope. And even following you around, do you have a favorite strain that you're?
So I'll give you my canned answer because I'm not. Think of me more as a milligrams guy, right? Beverages.
Okay. Yeah. Edibles.
A grams guy. But in the early days of Canopy, Tweed, we had all these we had genetics on genetics on genetics. What we didn't have with them was any domain knowledge of what did we buy?
Right. We
just had everything, and they were all marked, but like they were all marked by well-meaning people, but everybody would say, well, this is my whatever kush. This is my whatever hair. But they were all, if you cracked 4 seeds from each of the genetic groups you got and you put them in a room, well, there was no commonality between any of them. And so we worked through genetics and, powder and mildew cycles and things that were like herming like crazy. And just so finally we had one strain we got stabilized, and it was a Kush variant that finally grew. We could harvest, and we could actually reliably reproduce the same thing with the cuttings. And it was pretty durable to powdery mildew. Like it was in the early days. And so there's people that say, well, which strain is that? And I said, well, that one, because it's the only one we know how to grow.
Pink Kush?
Yeah. So it wasn't a pink, it was another Kush. But the effect of what is when you're on the business side of it, what you're trying to figure out is without the ability to use any of the sprays, right? Like everybody will say they never spray their plants. I guarantee you, when we tested all these plants that we bought as live genetics, they all had residuals on them. Like we didn't. And
sure, so, it's not from nutrients. Would nutrients cause that?
Oh, fuck. Some of the nutrients do, because they have all these unmarked ingredients in them, right? And some of the folks that will spray things up till flower, but they'll say didn't spray it when there's flower. It's still actually residual on the plant. So what we had to do is we were basically using nice, fast moving air, and maybe a little like baking soda kind of powder stuff to try and keep but like we couldn't use even things like approved products now.
Really?
Yeah. So in approved products, when we first came out, there were almost no approved products which you could apply to a cannabis plant.
Whoa, no way. But I mean, it's clean.
Super clean. Like people say, I don't like, I'm like, listen, this stuff is super clean. The building's clean. The stuff can't be in. So that kind of was like our genetics evolution. And, we went through many iterations, right? We had the first greenhouse in the sector. So when you open up a greenhouse, well, why don't we just ship cuttings of every kind of plant we have? We shipped down a dozen different options to grow. Shit, within a month, about half of them were like, I hate it in a greenhouse. This is not for me. They were freaking out. So you have to kill and you work your way through it.
Right. So you trial and error with genetics, essentially.
Yeah. And then you start to appreciate like the guys like Don and Aaron from DNA Genetics.
Yeah.
These guys have dedicated their whole life to strains, to evolutions of strains. Like these, I see people. Oh, they're amazing. Like there's a reason they won so many cannabis cups is because, and even cookies. Look at cookies. What they continue trying to do is have new drops with new evolution. So I think that one of the exciting things that's going to happen with cannabis is going to be the continual advancement in breeding and the genetics that come out, whether it's an acceleration of creating better terpene profiles. It's not going to just be like one of the companies I'm involved with has this Black Mamba testing out at like 32, 33%. And the guy growing it's like people line up for it, but he goes, man, unless you're Snoop Dogg, you probably should not be grabbing hold of this.
Right. Oh, really mess you up. Right. Yeah. Not for the beginner.
Yeah.
So, okay. So which one is, what's your preferred way of consumption?
So my favorite, two things that I think are just, and they're seasonally different, but like this summer, having the cannabis beverages, if you looked in our fridge, instead of having a bunch of cans of beer, even though it was a pain in the ass, we had always all the various Tweed products. And when I say it's a pain in the ass, right? If you go to the store and to buy them, you can only buy 4 at a time. You got to walk out, put them in your car.
Oh, no way.
And they're stupid expensive, right? Like they were, depending on which one you get, but think it's $5 or $6. In my opinion, they should be priced essentially the same price as having a beer, maybe an imported beer.
Yeah, $2 or $3.
Right. So
that's what I paid for mine.
But so I like that for a couple of reasons. One is if you're drinking them, you're not getting dehydrated. If you're drinking them, you're not getting fatter because they're either 0 calories or 1 or 2.
You're not getting pasties, right?
Yeah, but you think about like a lot of people buy these, White Claw and these other products that have 100 calories in it. What I found is like 0 calories is a lot less than 100. And so like,
yeah,
but you can have those beverages. And I thought, depending on, if it's a hot day and you got the houseplant grapefruit, phenomenal, refreshing drink. Like it feels like
you can hang out and sip it.
But so I like that. But I also, we've been using the Amura product in terms of just stuff your own stick with whatever you buy. But it's great because I'm not combusting. It just goes in, heats up, you draw on it. And so you're not vaping. You're having a heat not burn.
Amura.
Yeah. So I, of course, have like, I have the gold plated, anniversary Sturz and Bickel Volcano, but nice. you're not gonna, I don't need to fire that thing up all the time. Right. It's
not convenient.
Yeah. So, you have the Mighty and things, but really, I think Amura's done a good job with their product.
Yeah. I'm checking it out right now. It's for people who don't know what it is. It's literally an electrical device that looks like an egg, but you just put a stick in it and then you just suck it. And you turn it on and
so it's like the IQOS cigarettes. You see this in Europe and Asia all over the place where people aren't smoking nicotine anymore. They're using this and it heats not burns the nicotine, but you still have the filter in your mouth.
Philip Morris is has it with their tobacco. This is really interesting.
Yeah, and these guys, most of them came from Japan Tobacco, Philip Morris. They're all industrial designers and experts out of that field, and they created their own version of it that doesn't infringe on patents, and it works great.
Hell yeah. It's innovative. That's what I like. It's hard being innovative because, you're a taste maker and you're trying to get people into new things that you're like, is good. But it's just, you could be ahead of the curve.
Yeah. Well, and the thing, their business model is sensible because the device is very inexpensive. Then what they do is they license all of their sticks to various producers who pay them a small percent. So they fill them and sell them in the dispensaries, and they get a small carry on every stick.
Yeah, that's super clever. Did you think of that, or did they think of that?
No, they did. And, it's a great model. And then when they have geographies where they can't pre-fill, they'll sell them and you can fill them yourself. You use the same stick maybe 2 or 3 times, then it's time for another one. So, you buy a pack of them and you might pay $5 for the pack, but it lasts quite a while. So they have a business model that keeps making them money, not a one and done.
Yeah. Well, what would you recommend for new cannabis entrepreneurs starting out? What would be
I think everybody wants to tell you, oh, brands are everything or this or that. Right now, where I'm seeing the opportunity is what products you don't need to grow to make products. So you can make anything you want, you think the customer wants. So now why do you think the customer wants it? What problem are you solving? And one of the smartest things I've seen are these, essentially they're infused pre-rolls. Mm-hmm. So they're probably taking grade C cannabis. They're taking a variety of other products, keef, and pulling some terpenes, maybe from a flash frozen. And then they make these pre-rolls so that you think, man, this is the best stuff I've ever had. Right. And so the effect of that is you've made multiple solutions to multiple people's problems.
Right. And it was the cheapest way that you can get.
Right. So that's the kind of thing when you say, what should they be doing? They should be thinking about what are the biggest problems in the sectors and what are my workaround strategies to make a product that's unique and different. And that one is it's not so new anywhere, but it is so smart because it takes all the pressure off the grow.
So clever. I mean, I could see a lot of people being like, oh, we're not getting the full buds or like sticklers, essentially.
You know what? It's the hottest product because if you're smart, you can actually continually create a pretty uniform product. You can actually make it so that it is both impactful, but flavorful.
Yeah.
And so stuff like that. So there's a couple of companies out there doing sort of aggressive innovation. One of them just merged with Green Organic Dutchman called Cruzy. And so these guys, they weren't trying to be growers. They brought Wild to Canada. So, Wild, as far as a brand in America, what are they doing? Like 150, 200 million bucks a year in revenue. They're a meaningful player in terms of the edibles. And so these guys are just bringing things here and then getting strong so that they can then go to the US with financial strength.
Mm-hmm. That sounds super interesting, especially with legalization coming in America, Someday, be careful what you wish for, though. We're hoping the government shows up and makes this better. That doesn't always work out. Right. That's interesting because you're on the legal side of things, and there's obviously a black market and there's a white market, and you're a proprietor, and I respect clean cannabis and doing things right. You have to play by certain rules, to be successful, and I'm in the same boat, and that's why I can respect that.
You're in Toronto, where you are is a little bit north of Queen, but I don't know how many retail locations are open in your particular street. But when we were chatting before the show,
Tokyo Smoke,
why would you bother buying shit from somewhere else, especially if you're new to the show? You never would, when there's retail locations everywhere. And they're not all the same. Everybody says, oh, they're all the same. They aren't. They may have similar products, but they have very, very different, I'll call it vibe when you walk in.
Oh,
how brands, they run their show.
Completely different brands. Yeah. Totally. I've helped out a couple places start up their company. And but do you even just staying on that? Yesterday, one of the coolest announcements I've seen in a while was that Uber is going to let you order at Tokyo Smoke and you can come get it. But really what they're doing is they said, we're warming up. If you can order through the Uber app, your weed to pick up at Tokyo Smoke, all it takes is one legislative change and now you can order and Uber delivers it. Oh, that's so unreal.
Everybody's idea that, they're going to be like Uber, they're going to be like Amazon, they're going to be like, no, those guys are going to be who they are. And you better think about when they come in the game, do you have a play?
What's going to happen? Right. Exactly.
Right. So probably yesterday was not the happiest day ever for ease. Right. oh, Uber's now sort of actually in the game. Son of a gun. That's not super awesome if you're ease. And like, a lot of these people making workarounds for banking, those are dead the minute the banks can do the deal.
Right. Loans and stuff.
Yeah. I don't care if it's some of these guys in the US that take 12, 15% interest rates on securing cannabis buildings. If it's folks that are charging outrageous rates as far as a transaction clearing platform, all that stuff just goes to zero the second the real players can come in. And so like Uber saying you can now order weed.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, still pick it up at Tokyo Smoke. But that is a big friggin' deal.
The change. It's a big change. It's a bit, people have to be able to, I think in Toronto, people are a little bit more liberal, to the idea.
Well, yeah, but you think about how many people are already delivering weed in Toronto on bikes, on electric bikes with cars. That's all illegal. So now if I'm a politician, do I want to turn a blind eye to that, or do I want to let Uber do it legit?
What makes the most money?
They're going to get taxes on it versus not taxes. So my only point is, I think if you're an entrepreneur and you're seeking to be involved in a sector, you have to say, I need to have a perspective on where I think it's going. And it's better to be wrong betting on what you think where it's going than to play like the same game as 500 other folks. Like, well, how many licensed producers are there in Canada now? Like 500, 600? I have no idea. Like that's probably a super bad idea now, unless you actually just want to do a craft grow by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually was able to buy $2 drinks from dispensaries that were closing down. And it's kind of crazy to see. The infrastructure that Canopy has is super cool. You're still involved with the company, but
not really, right? Like when they fire me, that makes me not so involved. So I'm a supporter of the brands and I'm a supporter of the people that I'd hired. But
maybe you could have been involved low-key, I don't know.
No, listen, if I had the job of firing me the day they fired me, I would have, I think, done as good or better job than they did, because I would have said, okay, we should fire me if you want to fire me, but we should think about who's replacing me so there's no complete absence for a period of time, because that causes people stress.
Oh, they didn't think about that, eh?
Yeah, and you should maybe say, like, is there some residual value? Like, would the guys at Acreage like him to come down and run Acreage? Maybe this guy could
anything that didn't allow you to not work at other things.
Well, no, I could do that, but I'm saying so I have no connection to the company because the company didn't want me to have a connection.
Oh my goodness. So they gave you away like an asset, essentially. Well,
they said, get out of here. But the funny part is, and it's sad because I cheer for the people who work there, but like, I think when I was doing a terrible job, we had about 26.5% market share. And I think now they have about 8% market share in 2.5 years later.
Which brings down the value.
Yeah. And so like when you see it, you say, well, everybody's losing. No. Organigram announced how they're doing today, and their market share has gone up quite a lot year over year.
Yeah.
And so like
on my list and their product I like as well.
Yeah, you know what? They had problems with their grow. They made it bigger. They got it locked down. Now they have, they've had a couple of good CEOs. Another person who's the CEO now is good at what she does. I think they keep coming up with new products in new categories. You know what? We all love trying new shit. Like you're going to go buy what you're going to go buy, but you almost never buy just more of what you already know. You always end up picking something new up.
That's why my DJ name is Modern. Or my stage name is Modern. People are always looking for the new stuff, the modern.
Right. So that means the obligation on the company is to create new stuff.
Oh yeah. They have to be with the current.
Yeah. Because, look at just they announced we made more SKUs, new SKUs, and we took market share. Those things correlate.
How do you feel about the low milligrams in the edibles and
Yeah, people want at least 10 milligrams in a beverage minimum. Because like Hexo was number one market share in beverages, because pretty much all their beverages are just 10 milligrams straight up, not more costly than buying 2 milligrams. Kind of get that. Like now you buy one drink, not 4. Okay. I do think 10 in a serving isn't bad. Like I've been seeing things over the last, call it 10 years, where I think it was Brendan Kennedy, the guy that was the founder of Privateer. I asked him, like, what's the craziest product you ever saw? He saw 1,000 milligram chocolate bar. Can you imagine? Like, how fucking bad idea is that?
It's bad idea. I mean, you could break a little bit off and have a little bit.
Oh yeah, you could. Theoretically, you could. Yeah, you probably would be perfectly. So like, I think, I was in Arizona, and they have 100 milligram single serving beverages. Like it looks like it's a can, looks like a beer.
That's a little, yeah.
But yeah, so like at the end of the day, I think it's better to have more good stories than bad stories.
Right.
Because the market's still forming. And so I think it's still better to keep a 10 milligram upper limit, that you can buy more containers of 10 milligrams. Like I should be able to buy all the cans I want of 10 milligram beverages. It's costly, but I shouldn't have to go in and out of the store because I got 4 and now I got to put them in my car and go back in and get another 4.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I wanted to get your opinion on it.
I just think, but if we think long-term, isn't it better until everybody knows what they're doing? Because in a sense, much of Canada is still like a 17-year-old who's stealing booze from their parents' liquor cabinet. They have no clue what they were doing. And they get loaded thinking that drinking a lot of cherry whiskey is a good idea, and or some gin. And then for the rest of their life, they hate the shit because they just destroyed themselves once when they're 17. I think we're better until everybody gets comfortable and confident to stay a little bit in a smaller strike zone. You're
very right. And as a society, and knowing where we at as a society, being conscious of that, I think, and you having that perspective is super smart, because, if you're going to have a bad experience the first time you try something, it's going to be a turn off. And that's the way it's been for the past, how many hundreds of years? Yeah. So,
yeah. It's always the number of stories of, wow, my friend made some of this stuff and we were destroyed for like half a day. Well, that doesn't create a repeat customer.
Exactly. Right. You want them to eat.
So who actually wins then? Booze.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're like, oh yeah, it's safe. I could just drink.
It's safe. I'm just going to go back to sipping wine because I got 2 destroyed. No, that's actually bad.
Yeah. It's interesting because people see it's knowing too much. You separate yourself from the average user. And then I forget, I quickly forget that, when I go out, I'm like, wow, yeah, people don't smoke 2 grams a day, or people don't smoke they don't even smoke weed. They're just trying it.
Yeah, no, I think, and it is, it is important. Like if we're going to have a durable evolution, it can't just be a switching of supply from the guys who've been buying for 10 years. It's got to be a whole bunch more people feel comfortable, confident. So I'm really looking forward when they start they're going to have cannabis only concerts. They were going to have them this past summer if concerts were a thing without COVID. So you could basically buy cannabis beverages, not alcohol beverages. That's the kind of thing that starts just completely changing the world, right? People say, hey, you know what? I had a great time that day. I'm just moving out of the sun. I had a great time that day. This is what I'm not going to the liquor store and buying whatever. I'm going to go buy these.
It's not a toxin. It's crazy. I had a conversation with someone, and in my mind, when someone says weed is a drug, I get like almost offended. I'm like, weed is a drug. Like it's not a drug. And I'm like, is alcohol a drug?
Yeah.
And then it is.
They're all, but then you say, but is it a depressant? No, it is not. So when you start saying alcohol is a depressant, right? It's a big fat molecule designed to be a depressant. And the only way you can make it is basically in a highly calorific form factor, right, because it needs. So anyhow, there's just so much better, but we should keep going because I know that I'm now about 10 minutes late for something Olivia is going to say. I've rescheduled that person.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. Any words of wisdom, any companies you want to shout out? Big players, maybe some tips. I'm always investing my
things that have surprised me over the last little while. Like I wasn't sure that Village Farms was a big idea or a good idea, but they seem to be one of the few people with greenhouses that are making it work. So if you look at Village Farms, they actually had good product, good sell through. Organigram, I've always liked them, and I think I like them more now because I just see them being super innovative. It's now we're going to see. I think learning to speak German, if you're a cannabis entrepreneur, will be a good idea because Germany will have a rational market for recreational way before America even decides what to do.
Right. They're legalizing.
Right. And when they legalize it, you think Germans are crappy at organizing things or really good. So it'll be super organized. It'll go on clockwork. You'll be able to actually know what's going on and it'll happen. There'll be no monkey business. And when the Germans do it, does that give a green light to pretty much like if Italy or say Greece said, well, we've been thinking about it, but we were a little reluctant. Once Germany does it, can they do it? 100%. So all of a sudden you have more people in Europe than you have in the US, and they have way more accelerated models for doing it. So like my enthusiasm for Europe has always been high. It's much higher. Like German is the perfect, like if some crappy country did it first in Europe, it wouldn't work well. Germany is the best to do that because they're just that. Yeah. So like I just think Europe's going to be a riot. There'll be more reasons to go over, and like no one would have. Amsterdam's lovely, but its entire tourism base was based on like Las Vegas on gambling, Amsterdam on the shops. I think the big net loser out of a lot of this stuff are places like Amsterdam.
Right, because it's just a tourist attraction rather than a full-fledged industry.
Great. Yeah. Okay, be well.
Yeah, man, thank you so much. Is there any companies that of yours that you want to share?
So I'm involved trying to make sure things like Redlight, Holland keep being aggressive and looking for edgy things to buy. Pretty busy. Gage is just finishing up becoming part of TerraSense. So that's going to be a next chapter, which I think the guys from Gage are just going to bring the growing quality and capabilities across TerraSense way up.
Nice.
And so I think that'll be a fun watch to see go out. But no, I'm increasingly trying to make sure that what I'm doing is thinking about the next things to do, because I've had 2.5 years of cycling a lot of these up, like things I'm still trying to work through and make really good. I love the guys at Slang and I love their portfolio, but their stock's crappy. But I still think these guys are successful in markets like Oregon and Colorado, which are the super competitive ones because they're the most evolved. If you can be successful there, I think your applicability is going to be very high everywhere soon.
Right, because then you could branch out and web out.
Yeah, so Slang, I keep working with those guys every week because their best markets are the hardest markets in the world.
That's really cool. I'm excited to see what you come up with. I'm sure everyone else is as well.
Be well, man.
I'll have to send you some Dollar Club papers so you can try those out.
Please. Yeah, man. Okay, thank you. Be good. Bye.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.